Beach for the February meeting. And first rule is roll call.
Do we want to do the Pledge of Allegiance?
Yes.
Yes, let's pledge our allegiance.
Pledge allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, roll call.
Member Chase?
Here.
Vice Chair Bomar?
Here.
Member Mulholland?
Here.
Member Small?
Here.
Chair Skipper?
Here.
We have a quorum.
Okay. Approval of the agenda. Any changes to the agenda?
No, sir.
None. If there's anybody who would like to speak today, unless your case is on the docket, if there's anything else you'd like to speak to unrelated, this is the portion of the meeting which you would do that. So if there's anybody, if you raise your hand or come forward, I think we need to swear in everybody also. But we'll see. Anybody interested in speaking other than these cases? Want to do the swearing in?
Yeah, we just need a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll make a motion.
Have a second?
Second.
Discussion? Not all in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay. If anyone is going to be speaking to the board today or testifying, please stand. Raise your hand. Do you swear or affirm that the information or representation you are about to give is truthful?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, our next item is the approval of the minutes. Everybody's had a chance to look at those. We need a motion.
Motion to approve the minutes from
And a
previous
second.
meeting.
Second.
Discussion? Not roll call?
Vice Chair Bomar?
Yes.
Member Mulholland?
Yes.
Member Small?
Yes.
Member Chase?
Yes.
Chair Skipper?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, we'll move on into our action items. And our first case is 23093 7501 Gulf Boulevard. Brandon?
Chair, if I may, just before we get started, I'd just like to welcome our new member that we have, Mr. Mulholland, to the board. So welcome.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Happy to have you on board.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Look forward to it.
Mr. Chair, also at the beginning, since these action items are all quasi-judicial, if each member would do an ex parte, any ex parte disclosures that are necessary at the beginning of each item, that would be great.
Right.
Does everybody understand that?
Yes.
I just want to make sure that Matthew explained it.
Do you have any conversation on this case? Or
Okay.
We're going to go down the line, or just you want us to?
No, if you.
I received one email before I came, and I had 3 emails on my desk when I received here, or arrived here. I also made a site visit to all 4 sites, but I did not communicate with anyone at the sites.
Okay.
yeah, I think that's it.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Brandon?
Yes, good afternoon. Will you get the PowerPoint pulled up, please? So this is variance case number 23093, property address of 7501 Gulf Boulevard. The applicant, who is Grant McLaughlin of PJ Callahan Construction for Stephen and Michelle Boyle of Boylan Point Enterprises LLC, is requesting an unnecessary and undue hardship variance to reduce the number of green building standards required for the development of a new office building from 2 to 1. This is made pursuant to Land Development Code Section 39.9. Here is a listing of exhibits. An aerial of the property. It's located at the northeast corner of Gulf Boulevard and 75th Avenue. The property has a zoning of TC1, Town Center Core. It's the same land use. This is a medium to high intensity downtown land use and zoning category. So before I get into the variance request detail, I just wanted to talk a little bit about the project. The application was originally made for a site plan for this development in October of 2022. This is a permitted use. It's for an office building. The applicant came before this board back in March of 2023 for 2 other variances that were both approved. The first was a requirement to provide a corner entrance in 75th Avenue and Gulf Boulevard. This is one of the city's downtown design requirements. The second was to reduce the 75th Avenue landscaping buffer from 8 feet to 5 feet. And again, both of those were granted with conditions. The applicant's proposing a new variance. It's not related to any kind of dimension or any kind of construction standard outright, but it has to do with the development standards of Land Development Code Division 39. There's a requirement in the Land Development Code for any property in the Community Redevelopment District that 2 listed standards of Land Development Code Section 39.9, which I'll get into in a moment, are included in the development. The applicant is proposing to meet one of those 2 standards. That's the Florida Green Building Coalition standard. They're also proposing one alternative standard, which is called the Florida Water Star Program. That is not listed as one of the 8 that's permitted for this development type. So they're effectively requesting to substitute one standard that's issued through the Southwest Florida Water Management District for one of the 8 standards that's listed in the Land Development Code. I'll explain that more in just a moment. So this is the text directly out of the code. All development and redevelopment projects in the Community Redevelopment District are required to obtain certification for at least 2 of the 8 standards listed in the code. It then goes into the 8 standards that are listed. I did want to state that this project, being an office building, is only actually eligible for 2 of these 8 standards. Some of these have to do with hotel development, residential development. They don't apply to this development type. They would be eligible to build to the Florida Green Building Coalition Development Standard and the LEED standard. They are asking for a waiver on the LEED standard in favor of that Florida Water Star standard. And they will be meeting the Florida Green Building Coalition Standard A1. Here's the site plan. Again, this doesn't have anything to do with the dimensional requirements of the site. We have worked extensively with the applicant on the building and the site plan for this development. The site plan is ready to issue. The building permit is effectively approved through zoning for the design requirements. It really is just held up by this Florida Green Building standard. Here's some photographs of the site. It's currently a vacant site. I just wanted to show that the sign was posted. We have noticed this case in accordance with our ordinance. We have not received any letters of support or opposition to the request. So going through just briefly the 8 variance criteria. These are all responded to in your staff report. Staff finds that the applicant has provided partial support for a hardship, demonstrating that 6 out of the 110 points required for LEED certification are unavailable to the project. However, to meet the minimum standard for LEED, only 40 out of 110 points need to be achieved. That's for the minimum LEED certification required by the code. The applicant has directly demonstrated that 6 of those points are not available. This case was taken to the Technical Review Committee 2 weeks ago. I've also corresponded with the applicant and with the state Southwest Florida Water Management District since the report was put together. They have provided additional testimony and support for the waiver of this request, the waiver of this certification. However, it wasn't shared in the application, so it didn't make it into the staff report. Staff would like the applicant to share additional testimony, as was shared at Technical Review Committee, to show that there is a hardship, as they stated at the TRC. As I mentioned before, the applicant has communicated with the Southwest Florida Water Management District. They're the ones who provide for this Florida Water Star certification. They have sent information regarding the Water Star certification. It does seem to be a fairly high standard for water conservation on the site. It seems to generally meet the intent of the ordinance, but we did want the applicant to speak to the correspondence they've had with this standard. Overall, staff finds that granting of the variance will not result in a project that is incompatible with the neighborhood. We don't feel that it would result in any kind of detriment to safety or welfare or impair property values. Again, it has to do with the minimum development standard. It is a high quality project. They have met all of the city's design standards as well as the general zoning standards. It's just about proving that hardship for the inclusion of this certification. The design of the project is consistent with the code requirements outside of the Green Building Code requirement. So as I mentioned before, staff recommends that the applicant provide more testimony at this meeting, including describing the Florida Water Star correspondence and the fulfillment of that condition as the intent of the city's energy and environmental standards. If the board finds that the applicant does supply adequate testimony, we recommend approval with one condition, that the applicant shall be required to obtain the bronze certification for the Florida Green Building Coalition and the Florida Water Star certification for the development. Certification of both standards shall be required at the time of certificate of occupancy for the development and shall be a condition of its issuance. Should either certification be normally provided after completion of the development, the applicant shall provide a statement certifying such from the certifying organization prior to the certificate of occupancy and submit the certification after it's obtained. This is effectively just saying that if they're going to pursue these two certifications, they're going to show that they've actually demonstrated compliance with them. If the board finds that there is not adequate support through testimony, we ask that you just give the applicant more time to meet with staff and provide additional written testimony for the justification for their variance. That's all I have. The owner is present. I know that they do have multiple professionals who they would like to speak to this application. If you have any questions for me, I'd be happy to answer them at this time.
Did we have any letters of objection to it?
No, none.
One question, Brandon, the water certification, was that something that was available when the code was written? Because then it's not one of the 8 that were included, but could it have been, or?
I don't know that it was even around when it was written. This was back in 2008 when those standards were adopted, so.
It's a newer certification versus when the code was.
Correct, yes.
Brandon, I have a question also, just for clarification, to make sure I'm reading it right. So this property will have a retention pond, is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Hear from the applicant. He's here. Can you give us your name and address?
Hi, my name's Stephen Boyle, my wife Michelle. We live in 3672 Bella Vista Drive East, St. Pete Beach, and this is our property over here, 7501 Gulf Boulevard. And we're hoping to have our contractor and engineer speak kind of to the technical terms of this.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Graham McLaughlin with PJ Callahan, the GC, at 3251 Moore Street North in St. Petersburg. Again, we're just trying to push that we still want to meet 2 of the green codes. We're doing the Florida Green Building, but again, LEED, we're trying to, since the area where we're in with Florida, it's kind of tricky to meet their standards. So we thought this Florida Star, Water Star program might be a little bit better and more focused on the area. I know SwiftMud and Florida Water Star, when we contacted them, were very excited about it. They said the main push with them is to try to get more commercial jobs to do it because it's mostly a residential thing that it's been the past few years. They also state that the FWC commercial criteria exceed the water efficiency criteria of both FGBC and LEED. This is primarily due with the irrigation water. They say commercial construction usually uses upwards of 60 inches per square foot annually, where this makes the commercial property meet 25 inches per year for irrigation, saving a lot of water. And they're also pushing, with such a population boom down here in Florida, that water is going to become a more and more important resource. That's all I kind of have, unless you guys have some questions.
Okay.
If not, the engineer would like to talk.
Good afternoon. Daniel Bergen, Civil on Demand, 3876 Bella Vista Drive East, St. Pete Beach. Happy to be a new resident since 2020 here, so first time in front of the Board of Adjustment. Here working with the Boyles, and I had approached them about helping out with this project, wanting to see some redevelopment occur within this area. And I kind of got tired of looking at the fence, and I said, Stephen, Michelle, what's going on? We need to get this thing across the finish line. So in review of the code, what's interesting, and Ms. Chase had pointed out something that I made a note of, was that these were written in 2008, and we're in 2024. And when it comes to this project, we're talking almost 20 years down the road. And when I understand how the code was adopted in 2008, when LEED was something of green and sustainable construction was the intent, right? But we've done some really great things here in the state of Florida. And a lot of these energy requirements that LEED was pushing for and design requirements have already been adopted by the Florida Building Code. So the intent of LEED, which was a wonderful start program to get people to start paying attention to sustainability, and with the city of St. Pete Beach also adopting that, encouraged municipalities and in the state of Florida to start adopting these codes statewide. So a lot of the things that have already, the intent was, are already incorporated into the design. However, there's some unique characteristics to the site that make this site and LEED be somewhat at odds. And I know that we had only pointed out 6 of the criteria, but those were what I refer to as the low-hanging fruit. We're dealing with a 2,500 square foot building that is being constructed, as is everything else, within a floodplain on a postage stamp lot. There's only so many things that you can do. However, we are saying that we're going to meet the Florida Building Coalition criteria as identified. But unfortunately, under section 39.9, there's only 8 criteria that we can meet, and 6 of them don't work for us. So we're stuck with 2. So I think that really limits the options for the contractor and the owner to make this project adaptable and meet the code at the same time. Grant and his team came up with a great option, which was the water criteria that's offered by SwiftMud, which in essence is saying that we're going to take the initiative of doing something I think has more of a tangible impact to the people in our community. We all know how much our resources from water and sewer are strained, with the investment that's been put in by the city in trying to update those items and make sure that we're able to sustain our development and have future water. This speaks directly to that. So that's going to have a more tangible impact than doing a redundant certification through LEED, which we're not even sure we're going to be able to meet once we get into the full LEED criteria. So it's an expensive proposition for the owner to not have the certainty of meeting LEED. And to be honest, and as Brandon was saying, there's really going to be no tangible difference or benefit even if we do gain the certification. So we meet the code criteria for City of St. Pete Beach. We're going to qualify for Florida Green Building Coalition, which is criteria that is designed for the state of Florida in the unique circumstance, as opposed to trying to pursue LEED, which is a lot of redundancy, and something that may be square peg, round hole, which is, these are the national certification. It doesn't include things like how raising your finished floor elevation to be above a storm surge, redevelopment criteria that we have to encounter. Those sorts of criteria aren't able to adapt a small site like this to expand it in order to meet all these LEED qualifications. So there's a lot of uncertainty that would have to be accepted as risk in order to move forward, having that being the criteria. But we have vetted the other criterias, and I know the Boyles are committed to making sure that those criterias are met, and there's no objections to the conditions that the city has proposed if you all were to approve this. I'm here to take any questions.
Okay.
I think that's
Thank you.
Covered it good. We'll get back with you.
Sure, thank you.
Do we have anyone else here who'd like to speak on behalf of this applicant? Do we have anybody in opposition to this application? Okay, hearing now, we'll close the public hearing portion. We'll open it up for board discussion.
And I think this is a great example of a case that can help us learn how we can do better from a code perspective. I think the fact that only 2 of the 8 apply to office structures is relevant based off the type of development that we expect. But adding an additional thing from a water standpoint could really benefit the city more broadly from a development perspective. So I think it's a great solution that they brought to the table, and I'm very supportive.
Anybody else?
So I have a question either for Brandon or for the applicant or one of the representatives of the applicant. So the LEED, and I know just about enough of it to be dangerous, so bear with me. So the LEED interior, is that something that was investigated, whether you could meet that or not? I understand the principal LEED was a problem, but the interior that doesn't sound as onerous in a small building. Am I misunderstanding that?
Sure, and you got to understand the function of what this building's going to be. It's open floor space for showroom boats. So there's not much available option with how we can design the interior of the structure in order to meet when we brought it to the lead consultant said, really, we focus on that for renovations and things that we can do to improve. But this is a very box building, and there, you know, it was basically, when it was approached by the lead consultant, said no. And I've never seen one done for a 2,500 square office development, or which essentially is a boat showroom. So there's just not much available modification and things that we could do. If we had a larger structure that we could manipulate some things and modify some things, and these points become available. But we're starting to let lead dictate the design versus the function, and then the lead certification follows along. You know, nothing we could do to try to really manipulate the building in order to start finding these other certifications to be available. And again, for the utilitarian function of the building, what you're going to be seeing is, you know, beautiful center console boats with glass showroom that you're going to be able to visit, you know, view from the street. It's not something that's going to have intricate interiors and whatnot. You know, it's pretty boxy and but designed to really try to bring people from the outside in. So yeah, I would not say that's something that we could pursue very easily based on the use.
Anyone else?
So it's my understanding that this facility is going to be, or would be held to the same lead standard that one of the mega developments. I think I read staff had indicated that the cost to them to be LEED compliant would be the same as trade winds?
That's exactly right. And unfortunately, you cannot list financial hardship as a criteria for granting. So we're not listing it, but we have brought up that is a valid point, that if, you know, subconsciously you could take into consideration, you know, when you spread the cost, and which, again, to Ms. Chase's point, to find alternatives for smaller developments like this to be able to meet section 39.9, if you were to say, yes, the Serrata, I know no one wants to talk about that, but their cost essentially to hire the same consultant, the same team, would be the same as it would be
Let's not
for the
get too far
Boyles.
down the road. You can't be, the trade winds is a whole nother thing, or the Serrata. We're talking about yours. You've got a very limited amount of things you can do in a 2,500 foot showroom.
Yeah, you're exactly right, Chairman. Yes, thank you.
Any other discussion?
Any other discussion?
Otherwise, I'll make a motion to approve case, to remind me, guys, what number are we on? 23093, based off the testimony heard today with the conditions recommended by staff.
Okay, we have a motion and we have a second.
I'll second the motion.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion, further discussion?
No.
If not, roll call, please.
Vice Chair Bomar?
Yes.
Member Mulholland?
Yes.
Member Small?
Yes.
Member Chase?
Yes.
Chair Skipper?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Congratulations.
Thank you, guys.
Nicely done.
Brandon.
Brandon.
May I have a clicker, please?
Our next case is 230312814 Passageway Way.
If I could have the presentation, please. Can I have the PowerPoint, please? Thank you. Oh, that's going too far. Thank you, Brandon. Okay, so variance case number 23091, property address at 2814 Passageway Way. It's a unnecessary and undue hardship variance. Ron Wilson for Peregrine Construction Group for Matthew Foster requests to construct a new single-family dwelling that exceeds the permitted height of 32 feet with 32 feet 11 inches proposed for an elevator shaft to provide access to proposed rooftop area, relief from Land Development Code Section 20.17. So here's the property outlined in red. It's in the southern portion of the city within the Paso Grill, within Paso Grill. The property is located in the RU2 zone and the Paso Grill overlay. It is also RU residential urban on the future land use map. So again, the applicant is proposing a new single-family residence that exceeds the permitted height by 11 inches due to the proposed elevator access. This just kind of describes to you, as it's a new home, that it meets compliance with other elements and requirements for the like property, lot area, lot width, that kind of thing. Here is a survey showing existing conditions. Again, currently it is a vacant lot. It is a kind of unique on it fronts on Paso Grill Way and also has access to Sunset Way to the west. Here is a copy of the site plan as proposed. Just kind of shows the layout of the proposed dwelling, curb cuts, landscaping, and setbacks. Here's a rendering of the proposed front elevation from Paso Grill Way. What's interesting with this one is that because it is in the Paso Grill overlay district, it did appear in October and November of 2023 before the Historic Preservation Board for a design review. The Historic Preservation Board requested that the application return back to the Historic Board for recommendation to this board due to the variance request. So they went through, they did all their design things that they had to do because again, they're held to a higher standard being down there and different requirements have to be met. But they wanted to be able to give you guys a recommendation on whether or not with the variance. So here is just the proposed front elevation from the plans. Again, just in the green rectangle showing the location of the elevator shaft. And going up, or actually here is the rear elevation, so looking from Sunset Way towards the east. And here is that proposed fourth floor plan that you can see where the elevator access goes to a proposed moon deck of 535 square feet. And here's the proposed elevation on the northern side, the balconies on the second and third floor, east and west, or front and back, that do have additional open balconies, comprise over about 1,000 square feet. So going back to that Historic Preservation Board, their recommendation, it was expressed that due to the nature of the empty lot, it was felt by the Historic Preservation Board to be a self-created hardship where modifications could be made to eliminate the need for variance relief, and that was 5-0.
Can you repeat that, Kristen?
So going back to that recommendation from the Historic Preservation Board, they did not, they made the recommendation to deny the variance, 5-0.
Thank you.
So I'm going to take you onto the property now. Noticing was completed as required. The legal ad was published on 2/14. Notices also mailed same day, and signs posted on 2/21 as required. So here's our view from Paso Grill Way. We're looking to the west. And here are some adjacent properties. So going left to right, south of the site is a two-family residential. Going to the right north, looking north, is a vacant lot of similar size and also 28th Avenue. To the bottom left is looking to the east-southeast for a single-family residence across Paso Grill Way. And on the bottom right-hand side, we're looking west, Sunset Way, and a single-family residence, and looking south. Here is Sunset Way looking to the east. So originally we were looking at the property from Paso Grill Way, now we're looking from Sunset Way, and from the property looking south on Sunset Way. Sorry, and just another view of the property looking east. So here are variance criteria and comments that were included in the staff findings report, all the 8 criteria that have to be met and justification for undue and unnecessary hardship variance. So with that, staff does have some comments that would appreciate the applicant provide some testimony on, and that includes the applicant should provide testimony as to the necessity of access via elevator to the moon deck, as there are over 1,000 square feet of balcony areas that are already proposed with the 2nd and 3rd floor front and rear of dwelling. The applicant is requested to clarify whether the entire residence has been designed with ADA access in consideration, as this was highlighted in various sections of the criteria outlined in the variance application. So the applicant references that quite frequently. And the applicant should provide testimony as to if any alternate plans have been developed should the variance not be granted. So with that, staff findings and recommendation. Staff finds that the proposed variance relief sought does not advance the purposes of the Land Development Code Section 1.1 and 3.12, and finds the benefit of granting the variances from the applicable LDC Section 20.17 will be of substantial detriment and impair the intent and purpose of the zoning code. Denial of the proposal does not remove the ability to utilize the land parcel, as adjustments can be made to ensure compliance with codes. Moreover, the recommendation of the denial from the Historic Preservation Board is also factored into consideration, and consequently, the staff recommends denial of the request. However, should the board look favorably on the application on the relief request, the board may want to consider the following condition. The rooftop mechanical equipment, as currently shown, required to be relocated from the front of the dwelling to the rear rooftop or alternate location that would meet the requirements of Land Development Code Section 6.14. With that, Chair, I did receive 2 emails. You do have copies of those that were both requesting denial.
Thank you, Kristen.
Is that the only 2 you had?
That's the only 2 I had, sir.
All right. Is the applicant here today? Come forward.
My name's Ron Wilson. I'm with Peregrine Construction Group, 669 First Avenue North, St. Petersburg. If you'd go back to the staff testimony, I will go through that.
May I have the PowerPoint, please?
The first one starts out with 1,000 square feet of balcony. There is balconies on the 2nd floor and the 3rd floor. The roof deck is different. And all we're trying to do is provide an elevator from the garage floor to any accessible floor that there is. And we're asking for 11 inches. That's in the center of the building. And if you went back to the proposed front elevation, you can't even see it. And that's looking as though you're floating 30 feet off of Paso Grill Way. You can't even see that top, that 11 inches. I'm looking for that testimony. And then one of the other questions on there to provide testimony for ADA. The question is, are we providing it throughout the house? Yes, we are. Code requires that you have an entry door that can fit an elevator and 1 bathroom. Every single door to every single room in that house is the minimum requirement. And is there testimony to any alternate plans? Yes, if we don't get this variance, we're going to eliminate the elevator shaft off the moon deck. Simple as that. And the question keeps coming up about financial gain. There's no real financial gain on this. We're talking about a $3 million+ house. We already have an elevator that's going to go from the garage to the 3rd floor no matter what. Removing the shaft off the top's not going to affect us, and it's probably going to affect very little the sales price of the house at the end of the day. And again, we have stairs to get up to the moon deck. We just feel strongly in our heart if we're putting in an elevator to the garage so that somebody with disabilities can get into the house, they ought to be able to go everywhere in the house. And again, I'd just like to point out, we're asking for 11 inches, about the size of this piece of paper, 41 feet in the air. Nobody could see it. Nobody would be able to tell it. If the house next door gets built to the 32-foot height max, nobody would be able to stand on that house and go, hey, they built theirs 11 inches taller. That's how minimal we're asking for. And then, any questions? I don't know what else.
You have access to the moonroof up the stairs.
Yes.
So you could, if you don't get the shaft,
Yes.
you could go ahead and still use it.
Yes.
Just wouldn't be
Correct.
somebody in a wheelchair couldn't get up there.
Correct.
So anyway, you can lower the tower at any?
We already have. We lowered it to 7 feet tall. That is the max you can get for an elevator. You can't. It's 7 foot tall right now. And the only reason why it's the 11 inches is because you got to put a little bit of a pitch on that roof to get water off of it. And the other steps we took too, we're 9 inches above grade. Ideally, we should be at least 12 inches above grade. Between the first and the second floor, we used 8-inch hollow core concrete slabs instead of 20-inch floor trusses to make it easier to get airflow through the house. And then we have a 10-foot ceiling on the second floor and a 9-foot floor ceiling on the third floor and a 312 roof pitch, and we're at the max height. If you eliminated the roof, the moon deck, and the elevator shaft, we would still be at max height with a squatty building. Personally, I believe that the height requirement's too strict by at least 2 feet to be able to build a reasonable product.
I don't disagree with that.
What's that?
I don't disagree with that. I think the height limit.
And then I'd also like to point this out too. I know that every jurisdiction can make their own rules. I've searched Muni Code, every single I've searched hundreds of them. I can't find one that doesn't allow a waiver for an elevator shaft, a antenna, or a chimney. On this house right here, we wouldn't be allowed to put a wood-burning fireplace in it anywhere, not even in the garage level, because we still have to have a chimney to get it out, and the chimney would exceed the height.
If you were in another district, you would be able to do that.
If we were in Clearwater Historical Overlay, if we were in St. Petersburg, I can recite those two. In St. Petersburg, our height would be allowed to be 2 feet higher, plus an additional 10 feet for an elevator shaft. The city of Clearwater, their height is actually 2 feet lower than yours is, but we could go up to 15 feet higher with an elevator shaft in their historical districts on the water.
Okay, we're not here to change the height for the zoning.
Understood.
What's for that overlay district, and that's when they wrote it, maybe it wasn't, they weren't thinking about this as much as they should have, but we're dealing with what the code calls for. And you're starting off from new, so essentially you're creating your hardship by wanting to do it. I don't blame you for wanting to do it, but I don't know. You have anything else? If not, we'll see if there's any other opposition or anybody in favor.
Say that again?
We'll get back to you. We'll see if anybody else has any other comments on this.
Okay.
Okay?
Thank you.
Anyone else here like to speak on behalf of the applicant? Okay, hearing none. Is anyone here in opposition to the applicant? Come forward, please.
Good afternoon. My name's Scott Shemming, and I live directly across the street from these two lots, and I can see on that one photograph that both of these were side by side. And so I'm sorry to be opposing.
If you could address the chair.
Okay, I just want to tell them, I just don't like people in opposition, but it directly affects my house and looking off to the sunset. So it's actually 42 feet and almost 43, and it's not 11 inches from the grade. And excuse me if I'm wrong with how that code is written, but it's 43 foot high, and I think the code is saying 32 feet. So Pass-a-Grille is Pass-a-Grille because it's charming area, and that's why that's why the code was written that way. And I know that as much as it sounds like there's so many changes there, I'm not so sure if that does make economic sense with all the flooring and everything just changed to get there. But so my point is, those pictures too were not indicative of what it looks like directly across the street. So, and it literally is the width of the street and my front setback, and then and you can't even see my house from there. Like, so the pictures that were taken from different shots, and it doesn't look like it affects anything, but it does. So, I oppose it just because it's creating their own hardship, and it does affect others around, so.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Anyone else would like to speak?
Good afternoon. I'm Tina Douglas. I live at 2811 Pass Girl Way. My husband Bob and I have lived there for almost 50 years. And we both love Paso Grill, as you all do, and we want it to remain as historically intact as possible. Even with new construction, we feel that it should keep in mind that there are people that value the beauty of the neighborhood. And the Paso Grill overlay was designed very, very carefully thought through by a number of people over a number of years in order to accommodate new development, but looking to the past and not coming into a neighborhood and without consideration for the existing homes and doing whatever you feel like just because you want to build it. That particular corner is a real jewel in our city. Within walking distance, the Shammings home on the corner and the other two houses on the corner, as well as the one on the beach, are all from the Thomas Rowe time. They were built during the time of the Don Cesar. They are historic Spanish mansions. And all the houses in our neighborhood in that colonial district are different, unusual. Some are more contemporary, as the house across toward the Gulf, but they all have been built within the codes and restrictions that were put in place to maintain the neighborhood as it is. I'm a former member of the Historic Preservation Board, and I applaud their efforts to uphold this Paso Grill overlay. They voted 5-1 in their November meeting to uphold this denial and say that we should not cave in to anyone that comes along, especially, in my humble opinion, because my husband has done developing and I know Mr. Skipper has too. If you want to develop something, you follow the rules. And Peregrine purchased the lot, has purchased it not with a buyer for whom they're developing a house, but to sell a spec house. And so I believe, and my husband does as well, that they should follow the rules, and the design was created by the applicant. It does not justify the requested relief. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else like to speak? Hearing none, we'll close the public hearing portion. We'll open it up for board discussion.
I think the nature of this request is it's a hardship variance, and if we were talking about an existing structure, it would be a different conversation. But I think to your point, Chair, they've created this hardship, and the house could be designed within the current code. So I would not be in favor of approving.
I'd agree. Only because it's creating your own hardship. And he said if it wasn't granted, he would just do it without the elevation.
As an alternative.
So it's not, do I think we should have a different code? Maybe, but it's not different.
That's not what we're here for.
Exactly.
Anybody else?
So we have to rule on it this way.
Anybody like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion that we deny case 23091 based on there's not a hardship unless they're creating one.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Not roll call?
Member Mulholland?
I just want to make sure that I have this correct. I want to vote against this, and the motion that was made, I would say no. Is that correct?
The motion was to deny.
Right. And so the answer would be yes to deny it.
Yes.
Yes, deny it.
If this passes, it's denied.
Right. Yes.
Correct.
Member Small?
Yes.
Member Chase?
Yes.
Vice Chair Ballmar?
Yes.
Chair Skipper?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, thank you. On to our next case, which is 23076 4999 Gulf Way, or Gulf Boulevard.
Yes, Chair. If I may have the PowerPoint, please.
Is this the Smiley's shack? No.
May I have the PowerPoint, please? Thank you. Okay, variance case number 23076, property address of 4999 Gulf Boulevard. The request is for an unnecessary and undue hardship variance. Anthony Sparacino, extreme signage for Renate Astrofkis, if I said that right. Living Trust requests installation of an 8-foot 9-inch by 4-foot 35 square foot monument sign with overall height of 8 feet that does not meet the 10-foot required front yard setbacks, with 4 feet from Gulf Boulevard and 3 feet from 50th Ave proposed, and requesting relief from Land Development Code 26.38A. Listing of exhibits. Okay, the subject property is outlined in red. It currently contains Sea Palms Motel to the east of the parcel, with in-ground pool and dock, where we have Polynesian Putter, which is an 18-hole mini golf course, and a smaller detached building kind of sandwiched in the middle for the golf course and motel office. The property is located in the AC or activity zoning districts, in AC on the future land use map. Just a little bit more detail on the variance request due to the setbacks. Now with the prior sign location, I'll get into that a little bit more with the pictures and reasoning behind it. So I did estimate kind of just for you where the prior sign was located, and I do have pictures of the prior sign. Here is an enlargement of the survey with the proposed sign location. So here, the visibility triangle is noted. It also shows the proposed setback 4 feet and property line from Gulf Boulevard, 3 feet from 50th Ave. And the applicant also did show us where the proposed sign would be if they did meet the setback. So you can kind of note it would be kind of in the middle of one of the putting greens for one of the holes on the golf course. So I thought that was important just to show you from the applicant's standpoint. And here is a rendering of the proposed sign, the schematic. Again, it is 8 feet in height, 8 feet in width, or overall height, yes, and 4 feet tall. Okay, so again, noticing was completed as required. The legal ad and notices were mailed to those property owners within 300 feet on February 14th, and signs posted on the property on the 21st of February. So here's a view from 50th Avenue looking south to the location, just kind of taking in the golf course location. To the right of that, you'll see Gulf Boulevard, which ironically there's no traffic today on that. Here is the motel office and golf course building. And just going a little further east, the motel area from 50th Avenue. So adjacent properties, and we're going to go left to right. To the top left is looking east on 50th Ave. To the right-hand side on the top is looking south, and that's a restaurant, as well as there's an unnamed road kind of in between that. Bottom left-hand side is looking west across Gulf Boulevard to Beach Haven Motel, and looking to the north and also across 50th is the IHOP restaurant. Going zoom in a little closer on that corner, you can kind of see just the current situation there. And going inside on the golf course, you can see where that electrical box is. That's where the prior sign was. Just another view going east. And that's what happened to the prior sign. So this sign that was there, and the applicant can provide additional testimony onto that, that when we had Hurricane Ian come through in October 2022, that was the demise of the sign. So at that point, as you can see, it was lost beyond repair, and they removed the sign from the site. Since then, they have had no freestanding sign. And this is just looking from Gulf Boulevard looking north, where in the location you could kind of see where the prior sign would have been. And that was a previous sign. I did take this one from Google street view, and this was taken in May of 2022.
What was the height of that sign?
I don't have any information on that, but hopefully the applicant can provide some testimony on that. But it would have been a non-compliant sign with our sign code today.
Right.
Okay, and just another view, again, you can kind of see where the prior electrical box was. And again, if you can kind of remember back to that site plan, if we met the proposed setbacks of the 10 feet, it would be in that area of the putting green and the layout of the golf course. And here's how I got the dimensions of where the prior sign was located, just that I put in that matrix for you. Measurements from both golf and the avenue. And here's just a comparison of the Google Street Image view from May of 2022 and the proposed schematic. So you can see it is smaller in nature. There is less area of signage that they are proposing.
So outside of the setback, Kristen, would this sign be conforming?
Yes.
Versus
yes, it's
before?
totally conforming as far as sign area, the height, everything. It just doesn't meet the setback requirements.
Setback requirement.
Yes, sir. So here are the variance criteria and comments. Again, these were answered from staff in your staff findings report. And one thing to note that in my research, I did find that from the information from the Florida Department of State Division of Historical Resources, the Florida Historic Golf Trail, that the miniature golf course was actually built in 1967 by the prior owner. So that was kind of neat. It's listed that way. So for staff comments, we are asking the applicant to provide some testimony regarding the prior signage in comparison with the proposed sign, including but not limited to height, the setbacks, and the square footage. No information was provided if any of the current landscaping would need to be removed for the installation of the sign, or any installation of plantings are proposed. An applicant should, of course, discuss any changes with that. The sign schematic submitted contains the street number of 4999, but its location on the panel doesn't clearly stand out for motorists or pedestrians from a greater distance, and it is suggested to amend for greater visibility. So with that, the staff finds the request is reasonable given the features unique to this specific property, and the installation of a new monument sign will provide identification to the property, which is always a benefit. Staff recommends approval with the following condition: the sign layout to be modified so the street address numbers are clearly legible, enhancing visibility and site identification, to be reviewed and approved by staff at the time of permitting. With this, sir, we did not receive any letters for or against.
Okay, good.
And the applicant, as well as I believe the owner, is here as well.
If the applicant could come forward, please.
I'm Anthony Sparacino.
Rolf Ostrovskis,
We need your address also for the record.
49, my home address,
Yes.
6243 7th Avenue South.
And your,
And my shop is 5050 Seminole Boulevard, St. Pete.
would you like to tell us what you want to do?
Basically, Ralph would like to have a new sign there. He wanted to have a freestanding pole sign, but the city doesn't require, doesn't allow that anymore, so they want monument style. The only way we could do a monument style is to put it 3 feet from the property line on the 50th side, right? And we had the, and then we had the 10-foot setback from Gulf Boulevard, but we can't meet the setback on the 50th, puts it in his golf course.
Is it visible if you use the 10-foot setback?
Visible from where?
Well, the setback is 10 feet from Gulf Boulevard, right?
Correct.
Is it visible if you put it back 10 feet?
It is. It would be more ideal if we put it where it was.
And all this time.
The original sign was actually on the property line, so there was 0 setback.
So this one will be,
This one will be set back to the 10 feet, because what we're trying to do is not pull the old foundation up. because once you disturb the ground there, then you have to resoil it and everything else. It's very costly. So if we can move it back just past the old foundation, it's a better scenario for the customer.
What about the street number on the sign?
So
More visible?
we can. So the edge of the sign, we can put the numbers that going down the edge of the sign here, down the side, that'll be facing Gulf Boulevard. So as you see, you go by Gulf Boulevard, you'll see it.
Anything else that we wanted to ask him?
No.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to ask the owner a couple questions, if that's possible, just to get some background. Sir, you're the owner, is that correct?
Well, my mom is, yeah, but it's family.
Okay. I just would like to get a little background. So how long have you owned the property?
52 years, since 1972.
Have you had any previous variances?
No.
Okay.
We did construction, but never had to get a variance.
Okay. Speaking of construction, do you have any open permits on the property?
No.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome, thank you.
One other question, staff brought up the landscaping. My kids are frequent flyers of your putt-putt, so I'm there often. And the landscaping could certainly be improved from a visual perspective from the street. Is that something that would go along with this project and putting a new sign?
We will eventually, yes.
Can we make that a provision?
You can make it a provision.
It could be, yeah.
You'd be okay if we made that provision of giving you the variance, that you would re-landscape that area nicely?
Where the sign, yes, I can do that, yeah.
Well, in that case, well, do we have some discussion?
Okay, thank you, we'll get back to you. Is anyone else here like to speak on behalf of this application? Or anybody opposed to the application? Okay, hearing none, we'll close the public hearing. We'll open it up for board discussion.
Like the idea of the approval with
The provisions.
requirement of improving the landscape.
I mean, it's a nice compromise, right? We're getting the monument sign, which we want along Gulf Boulevard. And I mean, the setback just isn't feasible based off the nature of how the property's developed.
We'll have to work with staff to some sort of.
Yeah, I was going to say, staff didn't put that in the provisions.
Yep, we could add that condition that the applicant will work on the plantings, the schedule, the layout with staff, as well as if you also agree to the numbers, the street address numbers.
Yeah.
I would say, just for the record, I don't necessarily agree to put them on the side of the sign cabinet. You wouldn't necessarily be able to see them going north or south. I would also confer with the fire marshal just to confirm if there's any other areas that she would request.
But
it just kind of your eye welds to it, so you don't really see it. It's got a lot of text, and to bring that just so it's clear.
The sign's was there for years. We're getting a new one, but it's going to be moved back more than it was. Putting it back further, 10 feet, I don't think it'd be very effective.
No.
So if the address 4999 was on the
Vertical.
street edge on the plastic side, but not on the cabinet, is that what you're saying?
No, I mean, I think we could work with the current layout as it is. We just may need to, with the current square footage on the side itself, just so it's just not thrown in there, it's just more visible. Not adding to the sign or anything like that, but if you would be amenable to that, we can work with the applicant.
The design. Okay.
We could have a motion that requires landscaping and the sign.
Yeah.
Sign number, address.
Yeah, I'll make a motion to approve case number 23076 with the conditions of working with staff both to improve the visibility of the address numbers as well as to provide a landscaping plan.
I second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Not roll call.
Member Small?
Yes.
Member Chase?
Yes.
Vice Chair Bomar?
Yes.
Member Mulholland?
Yes.
Chair Skipper?
Yes.
Motion carries.
you know, while we're in this little discussion on the address, I thought it was a legality that buildings and properties had to put their address visible. And as I've noticed, most of them aren't anymore. So that's, to me, it's very irritating when you're looking for an address and you can't find it.
Well, this one's gonna be,
This one we'll be able to see.
yeah.
We're gonna make sure of that.
Thank you, guys.
That'll also be done prior to the issuance of, like, the final inspection and everything.
I think more people will be looking for the site as opposed to the address.
Our final case is 24003, 7300 Gulf Boulevard.
Yes.
37.
Can we get the PowerPoint pulled back up, please? Thank you. This is the last case for today, case 24003, property address of 3700 Gulf Boulevard. This is an unnecessary and undue hardship variance. The applicant is Casey Sanders for Albert Paul Nicholas Jr. of Smiley Snack Shack, St. Pete Beach, Incorporated. The applicant requests variances to reduce the required front yard setback facing 37th Avenue to 43 feet where 50 feet is required, and reduce the required northern rear yard setback to 16.8 feet where 20 feet is required. These are variances from Land Development Code Section 14.7B, 1 and 4. Here is a listing of exhibits. An aerial map of the property. It is located at the northwest corner of 37th Avenue and Gulf Boulevard. The property has a zoning of RFM, which is Resort Facilities Medium. It's one of only 2 properties north of 37th Avenue that retains this zoning, at least in the vicinity. There are properties further north up by Upham Beach that keep the RFM. That was the original 2003 zoning for the resort district when the city went through its community redevelopment district adoption in 2008. All properties north of this were adopted into different zoning districts. This property and its immediate neighbor to the north, which is a 3-unit condo building, they retain the RFM zoning. So the applicant is proposing a new 4-story structure. I'll show renderings of that in a moment, but they're requesting variances to setbacks. As I mentioned before, this is a rear yard setback, so the one that abuts the northern property line next to the condos. They're requesting a 16.8-foot setback where 20 feet is required. On the southern side, abutting 37th Avenue's property line, they're requesting a 43-foot setback where 50 feet is required. They're not requesting any other alternative variances, whether to height, setbacks, other standards that are listed in the code. It's only to those 2 setback standards. So here's a survey showing the existing conditions, all photos in just a moment. This currently contains the Smiley Snack Shack as well as accessory parking area. And again, just showing the request that was described earlier. On the northern side, they're asking for a 16.8-foot setback. On the southern side, a 43-foot setback. This is the proposed development that was sent out with your packet. This is a project rendering from Gulf Boulevard. I did want to mention that this was the one that was sent out with your staff packet, and this will affect the one condition of approval if the board chooses to approve that condition. That comes in later on, but if we could switch over to the overhead just briefly. The applicant has supplied a updated rendering. They are asking for a rooftop deck area for the development. So it is slightly different. It is still compliant with the city's height requirements, so they aren't asking for a variance, but there is a condition that staff's recommending that the applicant effectively build what they're applying for, that it not result in a larger development, even if it were to be one that's administratively approvable. So I just wanted to mention this. It is different from what went out with your packet due to the rooftop deck. There's no changes to the number of floors or anything like that. It's just the rooftop deck, and the applicant can speak more to that. We could switch back to the PowerPoint. Thank you. So here are some photographs of the site, looking at the 2 sign postings. This is looking north. This would be where the front setback is measured from. This is looking to the northeast, looking to the northwest. This is standing on the northwest side of the property, looking east, and it's showing the rear setback area where the new development is proposed to take place. This is the rear setback where there would be the 3.2 foot encroachment. This is looking down the alleyway. I say alleyway, but it's actually an easement across the front of the properties to the immediate west. There are a number of single-family homes immediately west of this property. They have easements at the front of their property to form an access for the properties that lie north of the 37th Avenue straight end. And this is looking to the northwest from Gulf Boulevard. The Smiley Snack Shack a number of years ago received a variance for the canopy, the thatched roof tiki hut that you're looking at here. And that was for setback encroachment toward the eastern secondary front yard. The applicant with the new development is proposing to meet the required eastern secondary front setback. Variance staff conditions are, staff respond to the variance conditions in your staff report. So I will go just through these. Staff finds the request is reasonable and will not have an adverse impact on the neighborhood. The request, as modified and contemplated under this proposal, does result from an attempt to mitigate the hardships faced by the property's unique orientation and the conditions imposed by the Land Development Code setbacks. It is also minimal in scale. I wanted to mention that when the applicant first made application, they were asking for a greater setback, a greater encroachment into the rear northern yard. They did reduce that to 16.8 feet. That had been a number that we had come up with based on what the setback would be if the property were oriented toward Gulf Boulevard, as all of its neighbors to the north are. The applicant also has a very significant side setback to the southern side that most properties that abut it to the north do not. The Land Development Code favors lots that are narrow and deep, which is the general condition along Gulf Boulevard. This is the exact opposite. It's shallow and it's wide. So it results in a much smaller buildable envelope than would be available to properties north of it. It is a different zoning district. There is only one neighbor that is in this RFM zoning, but it does pose a challenge due to the orientation of the lot relative to 37th Avenue. This lot is one of only a handful of properties remaining within the RFM zoning in the city, which affects the buildable proportion of the subject property to a greater extent than others with similar zoning designation in the vicinity. Additionally, the applicant has substantially revised this submittal to reduce impact on abutting properties. Staff recommends approval with one condition. The condition being that the design features, color, height, and setbacks of the development shall be as shown as in attachments at time of site plan permitting. Any alterations from submitted plans shall be noted. Should the alteration be deemed significant by the city manager or their designee, this approval shall be considered void and required to return to the Board of Adjustment for reconsideration. So this is put in place effectively to ensure that the development is as it's shown in the photos, that it meets the design integrity, the rendering, and that it meets the integrity that's proposed. I did want to mention that this isn't directly related to the hardship, but it is related to the general mitigation. The applicant is meeting a western side setback from the single-family homes as if they were oriented toward Gulf Boulevard. So they are moving the structure significantly further away from the western property line than they would be required based on their normal orientation. They would typically have a 10-foot setback on this side. They're going to over 20. So in doing so, it does reduce some of the impact on those properties to the immediate west, which is something that I feel is positive, but I just wanted to make sure that it meets that at site plan if this is approved. That's all I have. I know the applicant's present. Their attorney is also present, but if you have any questions for me, I'd be happy to answer them.
Is there any letters of objection?
No, I received one letter asking for more information about the use, but nothing to do with the actual setbacks variance. Mm-hmm.
And you said...
Mr. Chair, I have one question for
Yes.
Brandon. Brandon, just to clarify, so you state design features, colors, height, and setbacks. So basically, they can't make major changes to what they've shown.
Correct.
Does that include 4-car garages? Or could, for some reason, they turn the downstairs into something besides a garage and then only have tarmac type parking, driveway type parking?
Right. So, sorry.
To me, that doesn't clarify that.
Right. So, and that's a good point. You might want to add that in as a condition if the board feels it's something necessary. Now, I did want to say that based on the parking standards for this lot, they would be required to have parking spaces where cars are not stacked. So currently, as it's proposed, there's one lane to access the the northern garages along the eastern side of the property. They would not be able to just line cars up there because of our parking requirements. They would need to be able to pull under the structure just so they're not blocking that lane. But if you wanted to make something explicit, if you're open to approving this, that might be a good idea. Mm-hmm.
2-car garages meet the parking requirement?
They do, yes.
Space requirement?
Yes.
So they probably wouldn't want to change that.
I don't believe, I mean, what they're showing currently would meet the minimum. Mm-hmm.
And they've already made some variations to the original design?
They did. They did get the buildings closer together. Looking at the rendering, they increased the rear setback from, I believe it was 10 feet to 16.8 feet. They are encroaching 2 more feet into the front yard than what was originally sent to staff. So it's gone from 45 to 43 facing 37th Avenue, but I believe it's gone from 10 feet to 16.8 feet facing the property to the north. Mm-hmm.
It's a difficult lot to do something with.
It is. It's. I don't know of any other properties that face the same challenges. The Dances are is the same zoning, but they have a much different orientation due to their multiple frontages. So it's just a kind of unique lot for this vicinity.
Denise, did you have a question?
No, I'm good. Thank you, Brandon.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Brandon. Anyone else here would like to speak? Like to hear from the applicant?
Good afternoon, Chairman, members. Katie Cole with the law firm of Hill Ward Henderson, representing the applicant. We do have a PowerPoint to go through, and I don't want to belabor this, but have a few points that I wanted to supplement the record with. We appreciate the staff recommendation of approval and the evidence that was provided in both the application that you received and reviewed, as well as in the staff report. I did just want to highlight some of the reasons why this is such a difficult lot and the hardship exists. Thank you. Also with me today is Eli Payne, the PE, who with Baysite Engineering, who is the site designer who could speak to the specifics of the dimensions. Casey Standers with Clover Investments, who is the contract purchaser and developer. So this is the elevation that was provided and revised from your original elevation that shows the additional use of the height. It is still within the height parameters. So at the end of my presentation, I do have a revised condition that we would like to proffer just to clarify in the event there are some slight adjustments made within the confines of the code. As Brandon said, this is the site plan. You can see it has 2 frontages together with the private drive in the rear, which is a continuation of El Centro Avenue. The 2 frontages, based on that, require the staff and your code to identify which will be the primary frontage and which the secondary frontage. In this situation, the primary frontage is identified as 37th, which is the exact opposite of all of the other properties that are to the south of it on Gulf Boulevard. The 2 requests for variances, just to orient you, the north is considered the rear of this parcel, and the south is considered the front of this parcel. And so I just wanted to make those clarifications. That's truly where this hardship arises, is identifying each of those sides and where it would be otherwise. This is the north setback adjacent to the only other RFM zoning district. The RFM zoning district on a side setback would normally have a much less, it would be 10%, so as Brandon said, it would be 16.8 feet would be the required if this were the side setback, and so that is what's proposed, even though it's identified as the rear setback. Trying not to get confusing, I apologize. But as you can see, there is clearly a hardship. Ditto to the front, there's a 50-foot front setback required in the RFM zoning district. Here it's 43 feet. If this were to have been considered the side, of course, it would only be a 16.8-foot setback. Just to put it in perspective, kind of what it is relative to the neighbors to the rear along Gulf Boulevard, you can see that because they do have a residential designation, their setback is required to be 10% of the lot width. And so this is a picture on the right of how the setback encroaches into the required setback line, and then what it actually looks like on the ground. And you can see there's very little impact to the neighbors to the rear. Same on the south side. You can see the south, the westernmost parcel, they're about 10-foot setback there compared to the proposed 40-foot setback. This is the zoning map that Brandon spoke to, showing the very odd RFM that is located right here with the residential surrounding. The side setbacks in RU and RM, RU2 and RM are 10% of the lot width, so it's much less than what is required in the RFM zoning district. This allows for the structures to be oriented toward Gulf Boulevard in line with the properties to the north and the south. It provides the appropriate circulation away from the residential single-family homes on the south and the west. It's greater, the setbacks proposed are greater than the neighboring single-family home setbacks. The usable footprint is less than other RFM sites because of the dual frontage and the lot orientation. I would note that there's proposed 4 units here. Based on your code, there could be up to 11 units located with resort condominiums. The applicant desired to provide a product that, looked at similar to, sorry, I messed up, sorry. I was going to the front so they could see the very first page, that looked similar to the other single-family homes along Gulf Boulevard and did not just create a condominium-looking building along Gulf Boulevard. So with that, we did speak to staff about the height, and because this is a preliminary design, but because of some contractual requirements, we needed to come forward to ensure that our setback variances were appropriate. The applicant is still working through some design. We would request to modify the condition of approval just slightly to say that the design features, color, height, and setback shall be as generally shown in the attachments, and the height may be varied within the district's permitted height. So, certainly calling out that there is no request for a height variance, but that the height may be increased depending on the floor height, whether there's the rooftop use, and whether that rooftop use is enclosed, which is what is shown on this picture. So, and then the rest of the condition be the same. So, I'm happy to read that back to the record. But we're good with any variation of that. But we just wanted to ensure that when we come in for permits, there would be some flexibility to account for the actual architectural design, so long as it fits within both the approved setbacks and the district's permitted height. So with that, we do have the engineer and the applicant here, happy to answer questions and provide additional testimony as needed. But with the testimony, the evidence that was provided in the application together with the staff report, we would request your approval.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
We can hear from the others if they'd like to speak or add something. You don't have to. You can.
Yeah, it's okay if you don't have anything else additional to add.
Well, just to say at least thank you for considering this project. We're looking.
Just name and address.
Sure, Casey Sanders, 520 Bay Laurel Court, St. Petersburg. Thank you for considering this. We look forward to bringing a luxury development that's in line with the character of the city of St. Pete Beach that adds value to the neighborhood, and look forward to hearing y'all's response.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else here would like to speak on behalf? Did we have any letters of opposition?
No, sir.
No opposition? Okay, so we'll close the public hearing portion. We'll open up for board discussion.
Me, selfishly, I miss Smiley's because the food was really fun on the weekends, but this looks beautiful, and I really respect the fact that they took into consideration wanting to stick within the character of the city, knowing they could have done, designed something much different.
Oh, looks great, but what's the difference in the one condition that you, staff recommended versus what she is talking?
Generally versus like
Well,
exactly.
I think they can do the height. As long as they stay within the height, it's not a question for us. I think they can come in with something different.
If you look at the two renderings that were actually just provided, one that was originally part of the submittal, you'll notice changes from one to just the other one that was submitted recently. So, I mean, is that a significant change? Being the balconies have looked to change, the roof line has changed, and I think that's what the applicant is looking, that they can still design to have the same general look, but things may change. It's not going to be exact what you see, as long as they're still meeting their setback requirements that they're requesting and the height, and they're not going beyond that.
Other than that, I don't have any problem with it.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, it's in the design phase. I think that's
what I wanted to hear.
realistic.
I don't either, but I would like the condition on the garages, that for some reason they don't decide that they don't want to do the garages anymore. Personally, I'd like to see the garages.
I think they'd have a parking space problem if they didn't do the garages.
Yes, exactly.
Well, I'd just soon not leave that to chance if we don't have to myself.
Does the applicant want to address the garage?
If I may, Mr. Jefferson, I know the hearing's closed, but could you clarify your concern about the garage? You just want enclosed off-street parking? You want to ensure off-street parking? Can you identify what the concern is?
To us, and the drawings show four-car garages, and that's what I'm anticipating we're going to see as the final product. I know the facade and decking and some of that and the height already is going to change within the parameters, but parking is becoming a bigger issue in this town, and you've presented it that way, and I'd like to see the final product have the garages similar to how they were presented.
I would ask Ms. Cohen or Mr. Berry, I don't know that these have been measured that they are code compliant four-car garages, despite the fact that we say they're four-car garages. There would be the distinction on what your code, I'm looking at my engineer, and I've just run into this problem before. A homeowner can definitely fit 4 cars, but that doesn't mean the city would say that it is a 4-car garage.
Frankly, from my perspective, as long as 2 full-size automobiles can fit in those garages, I'm comfortable with that.
I think that's what we can
What I'm not
confirm.
comfortable with is there not being any language indicating that there will be a minimum of that.
Would it be sufficient to have a code compliant 2-car garage? Because very likelihood.
Or a minimum of
2-car, yes.
Personally, I'm comfortable with that.
Okay.
Okay. Yes, absolutely. I'm thinking through bikes and golf carts and everything else that go in a garage. And
It does appear to be a 2-car garage door, so
Yeah.
there are 2-car garages.
Okay.
Clarify that. All right. Any other discussion?
just along those lines, Mr. Skipper, from a design standpoint, are you concerned about it being a large garage door, or could it be a single garage door if it's still parked 2 cars? I just want to be clear for the staff, so when we are moving forward with designs, there's not confusion.
From my perspective, you have presented a 2-car garage door.
Okay.
And otherwise, it would look entirely different. There's some townhomes across the street from there that have 1-car garages. And
we're fine with that. I just would like,
Just for the
in
record,
3
you're
weeks.
requesting a 2-car garage door, so 16 feet as a minimum, for that aesthetic look that they're representing as far as the, both the original submission and the revision.
Correct.
Do you have a problem with the 16-foot doors?
It's fine.
Okay.
Isn't the problem you're just trying to solve is to make sure that there isn't any on-street parking, right? You want to have it all captured within each unit. You know, that's the problem they're trying to solve.
Aesthetically, it looks, I mean,
Okay.
it's a very nice product that they've demonstrated to us.
Okay.
What we're really here for, though, is the variance for the side yard, the yard variances, not so much.
If they want my approval for that, I gotta be comfortable they're not
We're
gonna come
gonna make
back
you
for
feel
the
good.
high rise. Yeah.
No, and we appreciate that. That's why I wanted to clarify
Only
the
one person,
condition,
right.
so we,
Oh, you have a good point.
Okay.
All right, any other discussion? Do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve case 24003 with the adjustment to the condition as requested by the applicant and an agreement to maintain a 2-car garage per unit in the design.
I second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Member Chase?
Yes.
Member Bomar?
Yes.
Member Mahalan?
Yes.
Member Small?
Yes.
Chair Skipper?
Yes.
Motion carries.
That concludes our regular agenda. Do we have anything else to bring up?
No, sir. Our next Board of Adjustment meeting will be March 27th.
Did we ever establish the May date since,
How many cases do we have in line, Krista?
yeah, because we had a couple, I know we never had
So
any.
there are still some possibly pending review, just because staff has kind of been in the midst of other things. But I can tell you, they are rolling in.
Okay.
And they are getting reviewed for completeness. A lot of times, as you know, they aren't necessarily complete and ready for you, so we're just trudging through, getting the resubmittals. So it's unclear at this point, but there most likely will be at least a few for you.
Okay.
I have a question for
Yes, sir.
Andrew. I made that motion earlier to deny. Is that on the one case, instead of making it to approve and then vote no? So is that, because we've had this discussion a little bit
Yeah.
before.
Yeah.
What's your preference, or is there a preference?
I mean, if it's unanimously denial, I think it's understood that there's not going to be, you know, I mean, the opposite. I think I'm fine with the way you handled it. Yeah.
That's
So whatever the motion
Make
is.
a motion of, but because it was a denial by the city requested, I felt like that's a motion.
Yeah, that's what they were requesting for the motion. So I think it worked out fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You just confused the new guy a little bit, but that's okay.
Well, what the question usually was if I make a motion to deny, and then she does roll, and you say yes.
Yeah, it is tricky.
Oh, am I saying yes to that they can go ahead and not deny?
And Mike and I had talked a bit ahead of time, and that got me thinking, and I just
Well,
didn't
Mike's
want to screw it up,
confusing.
basically.
Always
All
good.
right, anything else? If not, we need a motion for
For the
adjournment.
May meeting you had a question on, that was moved to May 15th,
That's what I thought, okay.
and June 20th was also a move as well.
Okay, if
It's on
nothing
the books.
further, that concludes our meeting. We have a
I'll make a
motion for
motion
adjournment.
to adjourn.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, we're adjourned. Thank you.
Sorry again.
Yeah,